Hello, and welcome to another series of interviews where we interview professionals of the tourism and hospitality industry regarding matters of importance. Today we have with us Dr. Ioannis Pantelidis, who is the Chair of Council of Hospitality Management Education, a Fellow of the Institute of Hospitality, and Director of Doctoral Studies at the University of Brighton. Hello, Dr. Pantelidis, how are you today?
Hi, Manos. Life is good. And yourself?
Great, we're doing great as well. Thank you very much. Dr. Pantelidis, we will not take much of your time. We will only ask you two questions that our audience really wants to find out from people such as yourself who know the insights of the industry. So my first question is, what do you think the future of the hospitality and tourism industry will be in the near future, post the COVID-19 crisis, and the long-term future?
Okay. It's an interesting question, and it's a tough one, because I don't think anybody really has great insights. Now, the thing you have to remember is that tourism and hospitality as an industry is comprised by so many different sectors. And depending on who you talk, they will focus on their own sector and their own experiences. I'll try and take a little bit of a more holistic approach. But the thing to remember is that we are just about, Greece technically is out of the crisis, but the rest of the world, especially Europe, is still kind of the outskirts of a crisis, of the pandemic, basically. And what this crisis is dealing with the unknown, because we had other similar crises, but they had the cure. So when you have the cure, things are a little bit easier to deal with. So until the time as a cure comes out, I think we will still be afraid of the pandemic starting all over again. And I think there are fears for the winter months. But where has tourism and hospitality been left because of the coronavirus? Now, you have to remember that there's been a series, in our lifetime, there's been a series of crises, and hospitality and tourism has been very, it bounces back very, very easily. And in some cases, and specifically for Greece, I'll give you the example of the previous crisis, which was with the Syrian refugees and the refugee crisis, if you like. It was hospitality and a lot of hospitality professionals that were first to come to the call of duty and support, where perhaps governments and even the EU in the early days weren't really doing much. In the same way, if you look at a lot of the responses from restaurants to hotels, you've got cases where restaurateurs, because they were closed down and they had an excess, let's say, of things like flour, they would make bread for local villages, would make food and meals for first respondents who were struggling to cope. Some hotels would actually host nurses and doctors and any other type of first respondents. So as an industry, we're quite good, and the essence of hospitality still remains within a lot of those businesses. But going back a little bit on the bigger picture of tourism, if you look at the reports, I think in mid-April we had an estimation of about $880 billion being lost in the airline industry alone. And I think probably by the end of this month, we'll be looking at about $1 trillion of an estimate. You also hear cases of big airline companies like Lufthansa is now seeking a bailout. And this will affect, for sure, in the longer term or mid-term, if you prefer, it will affect pricing. And a lot of traveling is price sensitive. A lot of the different markets are price sensitive. So if a lot of flights are canceled or airlines go out of business, you have to remember that the cost of traveling and the cost of holidays will increase. So you've got two things. One is the trust that consumers will have on hoteliers and the restaurateurs when they go on their holidays. And the second would also be the pricing. And trust and pricing are very much two elements of your decision, two very important elements of your decision maker as a consumer for hospitality and tourism. But any other crisis you see, if you look at the financial crisis a few years back, again, it was hotels that, out of a number of industries, hotels were doing great and banks were closing down and those buildings were taken over by hotels. So there's always been growth in the hospitality industry. And I think there was a Bernstein report that suggested that the hotel industry will lose about 2% of its global bedrooms, basically. And if you think about it, 2% is not that big when you think about the monthly growth of beds worldwide. So I think the industry will recover in the longer term. And I think I'm talking about the hotel industry, but if you're looking at the restaurant industry, that's also more volatile, especially when you're talking about small businesses, but it's easier to recover as well. A lot of businesses might close, but opening restaurants and businesses that may have closed in the past, those restaurateurs will very soon find their feet on the ground yet again. Mm-hmm. So in essence, if you're asking me, I think I'm optimistic about the future. And what will change dramatically is the way businesses collaborate with one another. Mm-hmm. Now you have to also remember that a lot of the businesses we're talking about these days are about the leisure sector, if you like, people going on holidays, and whether the trust of the consumer will be strong enough for people to travel. But I'm looking at examples around here, even yesterday. Yesterday here in the UK was a bank holiday, so as they are opening, they opened the seafront, for example, and if you see pictures of Bournemouth or even Brighton, you'll be amazed by how many people are actually going out and have no disregard of or any sense about. You wouldn't think there was anything, a pandemic going on. So in the same way, we are a social animal. So I think people will still want to travel, and people will still want to have holidays. You know, after you have a whole year of hardship, you want to enjoy yourself. Where there's going to be a bigger difference, I think, in the longer term, would probably be in the business travel. Simply because the Pandora's box is now opened and a lot of businesses have realized that you can do business online. I mean, we're having an interview now online, so had plenty of meetings the past few months online. So increasingly, companies will realize they can minimize the costs. And a lot of the meetings that were happening where professionals had to travel to different cities might not happen in the future. So I think a lot of that will change. And we'll see a significant, and hotel companies and restaurants in cities will have to innovate and come up with new products and services as solutions to make sure that they don't remain with very low occupancies. Does that cover it? I can go on for.
Of course it does. You gave us a very optimistic message, as you also mentioned, and that people will continue traveling and visiting areas to eat, and they have already started. So it's a very positive message. Thank you very much.
I think you can see in Greece, I'm following the news about Greece, and you can see examples already what is happening in the seafronts of Greece, and even the islands have been opened now. So there will be a lot of domestic tourism. So I think the balance will shift between international tourism and domestic tourism, and how much effort, if you like, hoteliers and restaurateurs and other hospitality entrepreneurs are putting in advertising to domestic tourism. I think there's going to be far more effort there in the future.
Thank you very much. And that brings me to the second question, which is, what is your advice that you can give on the current students of hospitality and tourism management, and those interested in joining this industry, which was thriving in the last decade and came to almost a standstill in the last 3 months?
We actually had a report commissioned at the Council of Hospitality Management Education. It hasn't even been published yet. I'm still waiting. We collaborated with the Institute of Hospitality on this report, which shows very positive message about students studying for hospitality, and is showing an influx of students, especially in Europe and countries around Europe. What is the advice I would give students? I would say this is probably one of the best times to study, simply because if you have a lot of, in hospitality, if you have a lot of businesses that are shrinking, trying to stay afloat, there wouldn't be that many jobs right now. But probably there will be far more jobs next season, next year, and the years after. So if you are currently studying for your third year, if you are just about thinking of joining, this is a good time to start studying. If you're just about to finish, maybe consider a postgraduate degree. It's going to be, I think it's going to be just this year. I'm pretty sure that it's going to pretty much is going to get better from next season onwards. The advice to the students is to stay focused in what you want to do, stay focused in what you're passionate about. Of course, take into consideration what is happening around you, but you're at a young age right now where you are trying to decide what career you're going to follow. First, you need to learn to walk. So these are the crucial moments in life where in a career we learn the basics. I myself, I'm an Alpine alumni, and I remember those years very fondly, my study at Alpine, and that's where I got the basics. And I remember those days. It was all about keeping the passion, dreaming on. It's the young generation that are going to be the creative ones and the innovative ones. So we're looking forward to you guys getting your degree and going out there and changing the way we're doing business. If anything, I teach my students to think differently when they go out in the industry and try to innovate and be more creative. And wherever there has been a crisis, I always say that's the golden moment of opportunity. And if you look back in the hospitality history, if you like, you'll find a number of companies that have started and flourished during moments of crisis. You just have to find your niche, and you have to focus and work hard on that. So don't despair and think, oh, this is going to be a bad time to join this industry. Remember, it's one of the industries that always bounces back on its legs, and no matter what crisis, has done extremely well. So keep positive, work hard is the advice I will give to my fellow alumni, I guess.